Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, October 13th, 2025. Alastair Crooke will be with us in just a moment on no matter what they say, do Netanyahu and Trump still want more war? But first, this. We all know how devastating war is. Lives lost, communities destroyed. But war can also threaten your financial freedom. That's where America's heading. Our growing involvement in global conflicts. It means more spending, more debt, and a weaker dollar. That's a direct hit to your wallet. So here are three things to keep your eyes on: exploding debt, declining dollar, rising prices of gold and silver. These things are already happening. Goldman Sachs predicts gold could hit $4,500 an ounce by 2026. Why? Because central banks and smart investors are buying gold hand over fist. They know what's coming and they're hedging against it. Currency collapse, inflation, and market volatility. Gold has been a trusted store of value for thousands of years, and today we need that protection more than ever. Call Lear Capital now at 800-511-4620 or visit LearJudgeNap.com. No one is going to protect your wealth for you. You need to do it yourself, and now is the time. Alastair, good day to you, my friend, and welcome here. Thank you, as always, for accommodating my time schedule. Before we get to President Trump's attitude about war and some bizarre things he said about Vietnam and Afghanistan, about which you've written so eloquently, let's address briefly the events in Jerusalem today. What is your take on this Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Tony Blair, Gaza deal? Is this real peace or is this just an act?
I think let's change it a little bit and say, I think it's quite important what's happened, and very important in a human way for the families and for the people who will be released. And the Palestinians will, well, not all of them that were originally indicated seem to be likely to be released. But it was important. Is it a peace deal? No, it is a ceasefire. And there's a vast difference between a ceasefire and a peace deal. And so the ceasefire is a limited part of it, and most of this is happening, and it's a big show, and it's, reality TV, and everyone claims success. The problem is that that's phase one of an agreement. Phase two and phase three were really never properly defined, really never properly thought through, really never properly agreed. So what happens when we get to the end of phase one is going to be very moot, because phase two calls for a new security force that will come into Gaza. It calls for Hamas to be disarmed. And I don't think that Hamas are going to be disarmed. I don't think they are going to agree to the other elements of, the broad, they're not clearly defined. They don't agree that Gaza should be run by foreigners. They say it has to be run by Palestinians, which is natural enough. And I think what is quite significant is that Hamas, in going to Sharm el-Sheikh, where this agreement with Witkoff and Kushner was agreed, was backed by everyone, including Palestinian Jihad. All of the factions of Gaza realized, perhaps, holding hostages, yes, it gave them leverage, but, perhaps it was time to let that go. It was a diminishing return, if you like. So I think, yes, what we are going into is a pause. And I think for many think of it, and one very senior Iranian official said, yes, we may be having a ceasefire in Gaza, but it is linked, and it is also about the end of a ceasefire somewhere else. in the Middle East. And so Quat in Gaza was preparing the ground, in his view, for a likely military action against Iran. And I think this is why we've seen this whole exercise being done quite so hastily. I mean, it's a sloppy job, you know. It was
Right.
taking an old paper and then sort of beefing it up a little, but it was sloppily done and hastily done. Why the haste? Well, in my experience, the Israelis just do not like flying in bad weather. I mean, I was in Lebanon in 2006 with the war there. And, you know, when the clouds come down on the hills, when the mists start and the rain is heavy, the Israelis don't like to fly. So if there's going to be an attack, military attack on Iran, then I think it is got to be before the end of November. Otherwise, both Trump and Netanyahu will have to wait till next spring. And who knows what the situation will be by next spring. So that's the choice they have. I think that if they want to do a military attack on Iran, they have to get on with it quickly. And that's why they wanted to have Quat in Palestine, because they didn't want Palestine to explode. I think I remember long ago an senior American official said to me, listen, when we attack Iran, as we will eventually, when we attack that, the first thing we've got to do is to pacify Hezbollah in Lebanon, attack in South Lebanon, and to make sure Gaza remains quiet so that the concentration can be on what happens in Iran and the war in Iran. And that's the reason I think there's quite a lot of haste. Whether it'll happen or not before, because end of November is not so far off, or whether it'll be postponed till later. But don't forget, we are at the point where the JCPOA ends, and there's a blank slate. And Trump is going to write on that blank slate, and he's already indicated what he wants to write on it. And he said very clearly, and also Tom Barak said it, you know, it's great what's happening in Gaza, it's great what's happening in the region, but you know, we still have work to do. We still have to cut the head off the snake. And that's Iran.
All right. We're watching scenes, not quite in real time, but just a few minutes ago, in and around Jerusalem, as the the Israeli hostages have come home. There will, of course, be no such media coverage of the Palestinian hostages coming home. And the principal Palestinian hostage, Mr. Barghouti, whose name was the first on the list, apparently was secretly removed from the list by Prime Minister Netanyahu after the Americans and after Hamas and after the Arab leaders had agreed to the list. I don't know how he can get away with that, but he gets away with a lot. Before we jump to Trump,
I just like to people to understand that in a way the release of Marwan is very important symbolically. I know Marwan Barghouti, at least I knew him when I was in that area as a leader then, and he was a prominent leader before his arrest and imprisonment. But what I hear and what I believe is he's suffered long spells of solitary confinement, and they've taken a severe toll on him, both psychologically and physically. And so I don't think he's going to be coming out as a really, if he does come out, as a sort of, you know, strong man for the Palestinians. I don't think any one of the Palestinians are thinking in that way. But of course they want him to be released.
Another question about Netanyahu today, before we jump to President Trump's rather odd statements about war over the weekend. Netanyahu has yet to defeat the Palestinians. He has made a cultural, economic, and political mess of Israel. he has caused the whole world, including the majority of the United States, to question the morality of the Zionist apartheid project. I guess he needs another war.
Exactly. And, this is, underestimated the toll that has been taken. You've laid it out very, very precisely, but the toll on Israel, is the fact, there were three ambitions set by
Israel,
Hassan
but we do want to
Nasrallah
bring
for this for the resistance, if you like, in Israel. One was to exhaust Israel militarily. Now, it hasn't been completely achieved, but it's been partly achieved. The second one was to destroy the cohesiveness of society, of to destroy, if you like, the cultural structures that gave longevity to Israel as the idea. But the most important one was to put into question, really, not only the moral basis of Zionism, but the practical basis of Zionism. Is there any practical way of running a state on apartheid lines where you privilege one community, one group of people, over another with whom you share the same land? And there's never been a solution to that if they will not assimilate into a state. And so I think one can say at the end of it, the pressures and the tensions that you see being imposed on Israel and Netanyahu are almost exploding. And I think this is what we are going to see. And the final part of this, the final and most important part of what's happening, is that Israel utterly depends on the United States financially and militarily. We all know that. But that's changing. And you know that better than me. I'm miles away. But you know what's happening amongst young Americans,
Right.
both the MAGA group and also amongst Democrats. And it's a big breach taking place now, I think, with Trump. I listen to what the young MAGA people are saying. And whether you agree with it or not, they're saying that, the story about who killed Charlie Kirk, it doesn't add up. It's a lie. It's a cover-up. He wasn't killed by Levinson. There was clearly, because there's no evidence to back it up. It's just another narrative. And they're very angry about that. And who are they blaming? Well, they are saying, we talk about Epstein, now we talk about Charlie Kirk. The cover's up. When are we going to get the honesty out of this? And they are turning increasingly against Israel, partly because of this, and partly because they feel, the American amendment on free speech is being attacked by Israel. It's being bought. The amendment, U.S. amendment, constitutional amendment for free speech, is being bought by extremely wealthy businessmen in the United States, and that is angering them. So there's a big breach coming with Trump. Yes, okay, we have the release of hostages today, and no doubt that will give him a fillip, but not much of one. I was talking to someone who knows the people in Gaza last night, really intimately in touch with them. Yes, but they don't expect the war to end. They know it's not going to end. It's going to go on. And so does Hamas, so does Hezbollah, and so does Iran expect, that this was a sort of calming of the situation, and let's see what else is happening. And what else is happening, that everywhere else, everything is changing all at once. Huge change in the Chinese position towards America. I know that the markets are probably going to go up a bit because the markets are in a frenzy. But what China did about rare earths really has the ability, if it is pursued, if it's taken seriously, that will be lights out for the AI, the American AI project. because it's not only putting controls, export controls on rare earths, it's on the machines that mine the earth, it is on the machines that cut chips, and it is on the smart batteries which allow American drones to fly. I mean, a really major, that's why the markets collapse. And then you have, at the same time, in parallel, in Russia, in Moscow, that a very senior official, I know you've heard this already on an earlier element, but Ryabkov, a senior diplomat, deputy foreign minister, told the Duma formally and said, listen, it's over. Ankara didn't work. We got nothing from the Trump people, nothing at all. Even in the smallest elements of normalization, nothing. No flights, no return of diplomatic properties, nothing came out of this. We've drawn a line under it. No more discussions, no more technical committee meetings. It's finished. We are going on with the military campaign and we are stepping it up. And so we're going to have escalation, I believe. I'm sure that this will result in escalation. It's escalation by Russia on the one side. We can only see very clearly what's happening in Petrovsk and other towns which are close to falling. Will be a major change, a military change is taking place there, as well as, of course, the destruction of 60% of the gas supply. Over these last few days, Russia has destroyed 60% of the gas supply. Many parts of Russia have no electricity and have no gas as their start. Many parts of Ukraine have no gas and no electricity as they're going into winter. So there's escalation, and I think we will see further. The Financial Times yesterday or today is hyping the idea that there was, there's been such destruction of refineries in Russia that this is really hurting Russia, and this is just the story, that has been put out now. The new narrative is no longer that Ukraine is winning, because that's just not feasible to go ahead with. So the Western narrative is now, look, actually, by going on with the war, Putin is eating his own economy. It's getting weaker and weaker because it's getting more militarized. And if only we just keep the Ukraine project ticking over on life support, that'll eat away at the Russian economy, and Putin will be removed from office. It's before you even ask me, this is total delusion.
All right.
Of course.
I'm going to play President Trump from yesterday talking about tomahawks. But before I do, I'm going to tell you the question I'm going to ask you at the end of this clip, and that is, did anything good or positive come from the Anchorage, Alaska summit? But first, Chris, number 9.
We talked about weapons, and the weapons are sent to NATO, and NATO then sends us a check. They pay for info, and they would need more weapons, and we're looking into doing that. We hope we're going to be able to provide them. They'd like to have tomahawks. That's a step up. They'd like to have tomahawks. We talked about that, and so we'll see. Well, I don't know. I might have to speak to Russia, to be honest with you, about tomahawks. Do they want to have tomahawks going in their direction? I don't think so. I think I might speak to Russia about that, in all fairness. I told that to President Zelensky, because tomahawks are a new step of aggression.
Are you saying that you will speak to Putin first about tomahawks?
I might talk to him. I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send him tomahawks. I may say that. If the war is not settled, that we may very well do it. We may not, but we may do it. I think it's appropriate to bring up. Yeah.
The immediate Russia response from Mr. Lukashenko, number 6.
I think we need to calm down in this regard. I've told you, perhaps, that our friend, U.S. President Donald has his own tactics for working on the most pressing issues. He pressures certain authorities and people, acts harshly, then he eases off and steps back. So we shouldn't take it literally, as if the missiles will stop flying tomorrow. He understands it shouldn't happen, and it won't come to this. That's how I understand the situation, knowing him a little as a person. So everything will be fine. Russia is advancing on the front. I speak responsibly because I can see what is happening every day. This could lead to Ukraine disappearing as a state. Just look at Ukraine's mad neighbors to the west. The forces and states that already see themselves in Western Ukraine. They are ready to seize part of Ukraine, as it was before World War II. You understand what we are talking about, too. That is why there is such fierce fighting there. I would like the Ukrainian president to hear my words and realize that only the Slavic states can bring happiness to Ukraine. That is why we need to sit down and reach an agreement.
That, of course, was the president of Belarus, who's a dear friend of President Putin. That was not the official Russian response. So back to my original question. Did any positive step towards peace come out of the Anchorage, Alaska summit between President Trump and President Putin?
No, not substantive. But I do think all the same that it was important that Trump recognized the standing of Putin, that gave him esteem, that gave him, if you like, the standing and bearing. And I think that was probably all that came from it. But it is quite important because I've got very long experience of this process of completely besieging and isolating a person and demonizing them and calling them all these names has certainly certain self-fulfilling aspects to it. So I think that was good. But quite clearly, from what we hear, the promise that we thought we had, and which Putin obviously thought he had, that Russia would get on and finish the war, and that Russia and the US wouldn't escalate, hasn't happened. And with these Tomahawks and other things, other missiles, long-range missiles, I mean, what the Financial Times, clearly a leaked document for a political purpose, but what it was saying was that actually Trump has been increasing the amount and level of intelligence to Ukraine so that the missiles they fire at refineries and deep into Russia can move around Russian air defenses and radar systems and strike the target more easily. And that's all American intelligence, not European intelligence. And the Financial Times actually makes that clear.
Is the United States at war with Russia?
Yes, clearly. I mean, of course, you are at war at a low level, low state of actual combat, but you're clearly at war with Russia, and that is where. And the whole of that statement you meant was, if you like, sort of saying, oh, well, the Europeans can buy Tomahawks and they can send them into Russia. Well, let's be clear, the Tomahawks are not really frightening Russia, even if they gave them to the Ukrainians. I mean, they're 40 years old, they're slow, they're not hypersonic, they're subsonic, they are big, slow, old missiles, and the Russians will probably shoot down almost all of them. One or two may get through. This is not going to be a game changer, because the game changer is taking place now, actually in Donbass and on the borders, where the game is changing and changing today. And there's no good people saying, oh, well, there's nothing, we don't see much. Well, look again, because it is changing dramatically. And so what Lukashenko said, and he said, I'm not trying to be to scare people, but he said, it's getting close to the point where there will not be a Ukrainian state left. And I'm saying this, to my friends in Ukraine. If you continue in the route you're doing, I mean, this is going to end up in a disaster for you. So I think I think what he said was quite important, and he didn't really hype it. We are living in a period where fear is being heightened and heightened and heightened. But it's nearly all public relations and bluff. And look what happens. Oh, guess those frightening drones over Lithuania. What did they turn out to be? There was nothing. The drones that were supposed to be on the ship that the French, if you like, arrested, there were no drones. What were they seeing in Denmark and other parts of Europe? They all turned out to be, and this is what they're now admitting, they all turned out to be, young people who are fascinated in drones. I mean, drone addicts who were playing around with the authorities and daring each other to fly them near airports. But there were no evidence of Russian drones at all. All of this is hype. And I think really too what Namoshenko was saying was, also these tomahawks are really hype. And it's dangerous in the sense that I think we're moving into a new era of escalation. Escalation will come in Russia, I think, by the United States. Maybe bits of Europe will do something stupid, probably. But also, the main thing is also we're getting close to that clear point where China may have taken the decision to pop the artificial intelligence bubble and therefore the stock market in the US. Not deliberately to create a huge financial crisis, but because they needed to send something very, very plain and clear to the United States. And I think Trump is probably going to back down completely on this. Whether the Chinese, the Chinese are really angry now. They said they've had enough because this whole crisis was triggered by Trump and the Commerce Department putting the 50% on, if you like, export controls that they'd had on tariffs. They said any entity that is 50% owned or more now has all the export controls on it, as well as the threat of 100% tariffs if you were simply exporting to America and you were on the list that the BIS holds. So he deliberately put them on that list, and that would have had big impact on China's own technological development. And so China has sent a very clear reminder. Listen, your whole tech enterprise is really fragile. So don't play around with matches.
Alastair Crooke, thank you, my dear friend, for your analysis across the board. I still need to talk to you probably next week about Trump's misunderstanding of the nature of war, but you're spot on with all of this analysis on these events that are taking place right under our eyes and noses this morning. All the best to you. We'll see you next week. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you indeed. All the best to you, Judge.
Thank you. A busy day for you coming up at 9 o'clock this morning. Ambassador Chaz Freeman at 10 o'clock this morning. Ray McGovern at 11 o'clock this morning. Max Blumenthal at 11:30 this morning. Larry Johnson at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Scott Ritter at 3:30 this afternoon. Colonel Douglas McGregor at 4:30 this afternoon. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.